She was 8 months pregnant, sitting at the most expensive restaurant in the city, smiling, because that is what she had learned to do.
Have you ever seen anything
Smile
like it?
through things that should have made her scream.
Who is she?
Then the door opened. A woman in red walked in. She did not stop at the hostess stand. She did not ask for a table. She walked directly across the room, past 47 people, past the piano, past the candlelight, and stopped at Claire's table. What happened next was photographed by a stranger and shared 40,000 times before Claire even made it home. Her husband watched it happen. He did not stand up. He did not say stop. He picked up his wine glass. And when it was over, when the screaming had stopped and the glass had shattered and Claire was sitting there with a cut on her arm and both hands pressed flat against her unborn child, her husband looked at her and said, "Maybe you deserve this," to his 8 months pregnant wife in front of everyone. But here is what he did not know that night. He did not know about the email she would find the next morning. He did not know that the woman he had humiliated had a mother with a yellow legal pad and a plan. He did not know that the woman in red, his woman, was about to make a phone call that would change everything. And he did not know that the quiet woman sitting across from him at that dinner table, the one he had been slowly making smaller for 3 years, was done being small. Stay with us. Because this story does not end at that dinner table. It ends somewhere much better. Lesson statement. Before we begin, here is what this story is really about. It is not about betrayal. It is not about a cheating husband or a woman in red. It is about what happens when a woman finally stops organizing her entire life around someone else's comfort and discovers that the life waiting for her on the other side of that decision is larger, quieter, and more hers than anything she gave up to stay. If you have ever made yourself smaller to keep the peace, this story is for you. And if Claire's story speaks to something you have felt, something you have lived, or watched someone you love live through, we ask one small thing. Leave a comment below. Tell us what moment hit closest to home. Your words matter more than you know, not just to us, but to the person scrolling right now who needs to see that someone else understands. If this story deserves to reach one more person who needs it, share it. That one share might be the thing someone else needed today. And if you want more stories like this one, stories about women who find their footing again, who choose themselves when no one else will, subscribe to this channel, hit the notification bell. We will be here every week with a new story. Like this video, if Claire earned it, she did.
The wine glass shattered against the marble floor, then screaming, then silence. That was how Claire Whitmore would describe it later, when people asked her about that night. Not the attack itself, not the words, just that sequence, glass, screaming, silence. But let's go back 30 seconds, because that is where the real story begins. Claire was sitting at table 7 of Meridian, the most expensive restaurant in the city. She was 8 months pregnant. Her back had been aching since 2 o'clock that afternoon. She was wearing a navy blue dress she had purchased 3 sizes larger than her usual because nothing in her actual wardrobe fit her body anymore. Her ankles were swollen inside shoes she could barely buckle. The bread basket sat untouched in the center of the table because Garrett had said, again, just that morning, that she should watch her weight. She was smiling. She was smiling at Sandra Whitmore across the white tablecloth, in the candlelight, in the crystal, and the quiet murmur of the room. Sandra, who had not once in 8 months asked how the pregnancy was going. Sandra, who referred to the baby as the situation, as in, once the situation is resolved, or we'll see where things stand after the situation. Claire was smiling because she had been smiling through things that should have made her scream for 3 years now, and smiling had become a reflex, like breathing. Garrett was on his phone. He had been on his phone since they arrived. He ordered for the table without looking up. He waved away the sommelier with one hand while his thumb scrolled with the other. Sandra watched him, the way mothers watch sons they have decided are beyond reproach. She watched Claire the way she watched everything else in Garrett's orbit, as furniture, expensive, tolerated furniture. The restaurant hummed around them. 47 people, at 47 tables, conducting their expensive, ordinary lives. Crystal caught the light. A piano played something low and indistinct near the bar. The smell of roasted garlic and truffle oil drifted through the room like a promise. Claire picked up her water glass. She thought about the nursery, the pale yellow walls she had painted herself on a Saturday in October, standing on a step stool with a roller brush while Garrett was in Geneva. She had ordered Thai food that night, eaten it straight from the container, and fallen asleep on the couch with paint still on her forearms. She had been happy that Saturday, simply, plainly happy, in a way she had not been inside their house in a long time. Then the front door of Meridian opened. The sound shifted. It was subtle, a change in air pressure, almost, the way a room changes when someone walks in who is not supposed to be there. Nadine Holt was wearing red, not accidentally red. Not red, the way someone grabs a dress from a closet. Deliberately red, ceremonially red. The kind of red that says, I have thought about this moment for a long time, and I am dressed for it. She was 29 years old, and she was beautiful in the way of someone who has always known exactly what that means. Dark hair, heels that clicked against the marble entrance, a face arranged into something between fury and resolve. She scanned the room. Her eyes found Claire before they found Garrett. She walked directly to their table. Everything slowed down. The piano kept playing. Someone laughed at a table near the window. The waiter appeared from the left with a bread basket for another table. Stepped back, paused, assessed. Nadine's voice cut through the ambient sound like a blade sliding through silk. So this is where you have been hiding her. Garrett did not stand. He did not speak. He looked up from his phone, looked at Nadine, and looked back down at his phone. Not with shock, not with guilt, with the expression of a man whose schedule has been interrupted. Sandra went completely still. Nadine leaned down. Her face was 6 inches from Claire's. Claire could smell her perfume, something expensive and sharp, like cut flowers, left too long in the vase. Did he tell you about last weekend? Nadine said. Her voice was low, controlled, designed to travel exactly as far as it needed to. No? Did he tell you about the apartment he pays for? Still no. Claire's hands moved before her mind caught up with them, both palms flat against the curve of her stomach. Not a gesture, not a performance, just a mother putting herself between her child and the world. An instinct older than language. She would think about those hands later, about how her body knew, even when her mind was still catching up. He told me you were done, Nadine continued. He told me you were just waiting on the baby to make it official. He said by the end of December. The room had gone quiet, not all at once, table by table, conversation by conversation. The restaurant fell silent the way a theater falls silent when something real begins to happen on stage. That is enough. Sandra's voice, cold, precise, a scalpel, but she was looking at Claire when she said it. Nadine reached across the table. She grabbed Garrett's sleeve. He finally looked up, and what Claire saw on her husband's face in that moment was not guilt. It was not horror. It was not protectiveness or love or shame. It was inconvenience. Nadine, he said. Not here. Then where? Her voice cracked. This was not just fury. Underneath the fury was something raw, something that had been waiting too long and had finally run out of patience. You said by the end of the year, it is December, Garrett. The waiter moved toward them. Nadine shoved him. She did not mean to. The tray went sideways. Water, ice, a wine glass. It hit the edge of the table and shattered against the marble. A shard skipped across the white tablecloth and caught Claire's forearm. A thin line of red opened along her skin. Nadine's hand came down on Claire's shoulder. Not a slap. Worse than a slap. A grip and a shake. Violent, dismissive, like removing an obstacle from a path. like Claire was a thing to be moved aside. "Get up," Nadine said. "Just get up and leave. You were never supposed to be here." The chair legs scraped. Claire gripped the table. Somewhere behind her, a woman gasped. The manager was moving fast through the room. Two men in dark suits appeared from near the entrance. "Nadine?" Garrett's voice. Hard. Final. But not. Claire registered this with the clarity of a woman in shock, not protective. Nadine was escorted toward the exit. Still talking, still looking back, her red dress moving through the room like a wound that had not finished bleeding. The restaurant breathed. Everyone looked at Garrett. He set his phone face down on the tablecloth. He picked up his wine glass. He took a sip. He looked at Claire, at the blood on her forearm, at her shaking hands still pressed flat against her stomach, at her face. And he said, "You should have left when I asked you to 3 months ago. Maybe then this would not have happened." Sandra, beside him, said nothing. The piano had stopped. Claire looked at her husband's face. She looked at it the way you look at something you are seeing clearly for the first time. Because all the filters are gone, and the light has shifted, and there is simply nowhere left to look that is not the truth. She waited for the rest of the sentence. The part where he said he was sorry. The part where he came around the table. The part where he was the man she had tried for 3 years to believe he could still be. It did not come. What happened next, Claire would say later, was not a breakdown. It was a door closing very quietly and locking from the inside. She stood, slowly, one hand on the table. She did not cry. She did not raise her voice. She reached for her wrap. She reached for her purse. She looked at Sandra Whitmore one final time. "Please tell your son," Claire said, very quietly, "that his child will remember this dinner." She walked to the exit. The valet brought her car in 4 minutes. She sat behind the wheel. She did not drive. Her hands were still shaking. Through the restaurant window, lit like a stage set, she could see Garrett at the table. He was already back on his phone. Already done. She looked down at her stomach. The baby moved, a slow, rolling push against the inside of her ribs. "Hello? Hello. I am here." "Okay," Claire said aloud. To no one, to what from the dark car, to the child she had not yet met. "Okay." She picked up her phone. She called Bryn. Claire did not sleep. She lay in the guest bedroom. She had moved there 2 months ago, telling herself it was because of the insomnia, telling herself a great many things, and watched the ceiling change color as headlights moved past the window. 4:17 in the morning. The baby was awake too, moving, a knee or an elbow or something nameless and certain, tracing slow circles under her skin. The cut on her forearm had stopped bleeding. It was not serious. A thin line, already closing. She had cleaned it in the bathroom with antiseptic from the cabinet, standing in the white light of the mirror, looking at her own face. She had not recognized herself. Not because she looked different, because she looked the same face she had been carrying through 3 years of this marriage, the same patient, careful expression, the same eyes that had been quietly watching and quietly noting and quietly filing things away in a drawer she had decided not to open. The drawer was open now. 3 times, she picked up her phone, opened a text to Garrett, deleted it. Lock, unlock, lock, unlock, lock. She did not send anything. There was nothing to send. Every sentence she composed dissolved before it reached the screen, because every sentence began with a question, and she already knew the answers. So instead of texting, she went over it, the way she always went over things, starting at the beginning, walking through every moment, looking for the place She had missed the turn. 3 years ago, a charity gala for a children's hospital. She was volunteering at the registration table. He was the keynote donor. He had stood at her table with a smile that cost more than her car and said, "You are the most real person in this room." She had laughed. She had thought it was a compliment 2.5 years ago. She quit her job as a physical therapist because his schedule required her availability. He had framed it as freedom. "You can do whatever you want now, Claire. You are free." She had believed him. She had spent the first 3 months genuinely believing him. 2 years ago, the first dinner party where she felt herself disappear. She had said something. She could not even remember what now, and he had spoken directly over her, to the person across the table, as if she had not made a sound. She had told herself he had not heard her. She had known he heard her. She had known, and she had chosen, every single time, the story that hurt less. "I knew," she said aloud to the dark bedroom, not a question, a statement of fact, delivered to the ceiling and the dark and the child moving inside her. "I knew something was wrong. I just kept choosing not to know." By 5 in the morning she was in the kitchen. She made tea she did not drink. She reorganized the spice rack, alphabetically first, then by frequency of use, then alphabetically again. Her mother had told her once, washing dishes on a Sunday evening, that women in this family cleaned when they were about to go to war. Bryn arrived at 7:45, uninvited, carrying a paper grocery bag, wearing the expression Claire had been dreading since she called her from the parking lot the night before. Not pity. Bryn had never looked at Claire with pity. This was something more serious. This was the face of someone who had been holding something back for a long time and had finally been given permission to put it down. "I saw the photos," Bryn said. Claire stared. "What photos?" Someone at the restaurant had photographed it. The moment Nadine grabbed her shoulder, the wine glass in mid-shatter, Claire's hands on her stomach, posted online before the valet had even brought her car around. By morning, it had 40,000 shares and a headline on 3 entertainment news sites. "Billionaire's wife attacked at dinner. Husband watches." Claire sat down heavily in the kitchen chair. "He has not called," Bryn said carefully. "No." "He has not texted." "No." Bryn set the groceries on the counter. She was quiet for a moment, not the silence of someone searching for words, the silence of someone choosing them very deliberately. "Honey," she said, "I have been biting my tongue for 2 years. Are you ready to hear it?" Claire looked at her best friend. "No," she said. "But go ahead." Bryn sat down across from her, not beside her, across so that Claire had to look directly at her face, so there was nowhere else to look. "I met Nadine Holt at Marcus Hale's 4th of July party," Bryn said. 8 months ago. She was there with Garrett, not as a colleague. I could tell from the way they were standing, from the way he looked at her, from the way she did not look at anyone else in the room. She paused. Her voice was steady, but the steadiness was costing her something. "I did not tell you because you were 3 months pregnant, and I did not know how to... I kept thinking there would be a better time. I have been waiting every single day for you to call me and say you found out, so I could finally just tell you everything." The silence that followed lasted a long time. "How long?" Claire asked. "From what I could piece together, at least 18 months. Claire did the math. She was 3 months pregnant when Bryn saw them at the party, 8 months ago, which meant the affair was already 18 months old when she conceived, which meant when Garrett came home that evening, the evening she had been so nervous, the pregnancy test on the bathroom counter, her heart going too fast, when he had opened the champagne and held her face in his hands and cried real tears, the kind that came from the eyes, not the throat. He already knew. He had known about Nadine while he was crying over their baby. He had known about Nadine while he was assembling the crib on that Sunday afternoon with the Thai food and the instruction manual and the laugh about the upside-down bracket. He had known the entire time. Bryn reached across the table. Claire did not take her hand. She was somewhere else. She was back in that kitchen with the positive test and the champagne and the man she had married, who had been lying to her face every single day for a year and a half. "I deserve better than this," she said, not loudly, almost to herself, but clearly, with a certainty she had not felt in 3 years. "I deserve a better than every single day of this." The front door opened at 8:12. Garrett walked in wearing yesterday's suit. He looked like a man who had made calculations and arrived at a plan. He saw Bryn, and something tightened briefly around his eyes. "I think you should go," he said to Bryn. Bryn did not move. He turned to Claire. His voice shifted, reasonable, patient. The voice he used in board meetings, she had always imagined. The voice of a man explaining something to someone who simply did not yet understand. "We need to talk about last night," he said. "About the way you handled it." The way I handled it. Something in Claire's chest realigned, quietly, like a lock engaging. "She put her hands on me," Claire said, "while I was carrying your child. She was upset. She acted out of emotion. It was not. You said I deserved it." The room went very quiet. Garrett set his keys on the counter. He ran a hand through his hair. He looked. And this was the thing Claire would return to for weeks. Annoyed. Not guilty, not ashamed. Annoyed, the way a man looks when a situation he thought he had managed has become inconvenient again. "I did not mean it like that," he said. "How did you mean it?" "I meant that if you had simply... We have been over this. I told you months ago that things were not working between us. If you had been willing to have the conversation then, instead of... You said I deserved to have a woman shake me by the shoulder while I was 8 months pregnant with your child." Claire's voice was even. She was not trembling anymore. Something much steadier had moved into the space where the trembling had been. "That is not a miscommunication. That is who you are." Bryn stood up. Garrett looked at her. "I heard what you said," Bryn told him. She picked up her bag. She looked at Claire. "I will be in my car. You call me in 15 minutes or I am coming back in." She left. Garrett's explanation lasted 11 minutes. Claire counted. It involved phrases like, "You have to understand the situation," and it became complicated, and I never intended for it to reach this point. He was smooth. He had clearly rehearsed it, or something like it. He managed to describe an 18-month affair and a plan to leave his pregnant wife without once using the word "I am sorry." When he finished, Claire asked one question. "Do you love her?" He paused. 1 second, 1/2 beat too long. "That is not the point," he said. "That," Claire replied, "is the only point there is." She got up from the table. She walked to the bedroom. She locked the door. She sat on the edge of the bed, and she called Bryn, and she said, very quietly, "I am okay." And then she scrolled to a number she had saved in her phone last month, during one of those 4 in the morning sessions of lying awake and knowing something was wrong and searching, just in case, just to have it there. Evan Mercer, family law attorney. His receptionist answered on the first ring. She did not make the appointment immediately. First, she went to the nursery. She did not decide to go there. Her feet simply carried her, the way feet sometimes do when the mind has gone somewhere it cannot follow. She stood in the doorway of the room she had painted herself on that Saturday in October. Pale yellow, not mint, not white, not the gray that Garrett had suggested, because it is more neutral. "Claire," more sophisticated, yellow, because she had wanted warmth in this room before she even knew who would be sleeping in it. The crib was assembled against the far wall, white, with a small mobile of stars hanging above it. She had found the mobile at a weekend market, handmade, painted white with gold edges. She had paid $30 for it, and Garrett had looked at it the way he looked at anything she chose without his input. She stood in the doorway, and she did not go in, because going in meant becoming the woman standing in the nursery with no father for this baby. And she was not yet ready to be that woman. She was standing just outside her, in the doorway, one hand on the frame. She thought about her mother. Patrice Dunmore had raised Claire and her younger brother alone after Claire's father left when she was 9 years old. 2 children, a mortgage, and a job at a dental office, where she worked double shifts every school holiday. She had never missed a school play or a graduation or a hard conversation. She had been present for every single thing that mattered. She had told Claire once, washing dishes on a Sunday evening while Claire sat at the kitchen table pretending to do homework and actually watching her mother's face. The only thing harder than leaving is staying when you already know you should go. Claire had been 9. She had not understood. She was 32. She understood now. She went back to the bedroom. She opened her laptop. She was going to search for Evan Mercer's website, find his direct line, make the appointment herself. She opened the browser. She opened the shared household email account instead. She did not know why. It was an old account, set up when they bought the house, linked to the mortgage and the utilities and a few subscriptions. Neither of them had used it in months. She had not even thought about it. Her fingers typed the address from memory, like a reflex. She logged in. There were 14 unread messages, mostly automated, Con Edison, a warranty notification, a statement from the home insurance company, and one with a subject line that stopped her breath entirely. Holt/Whitmore. Lease renewal. Unit 14 Bay. She stared at it for a long time. She told herself it was something else, a coincidence. Holt was a common name. She opened it. It was a lease agreement. Garrett Whitmore, lessee. Nadine Holt, co-occupant. An address 4 miles from their house. Renewal date 3 months ago. He had renewed the lease 3 months ago, when she was 5 months pregnant. He had renewed another woman's apartment while Claire was painting the nursery yellow. She scrolled. A second email. A third. She found a thread going back 22 months, forwarded to this account from an address she did not recognize. Apartment payments routed through a secondary account. Restaurant reservations at places she had suggested and been told were overrated. Jewelry receipts, 2 of them for a bracelet and a necklace, the kind of things he had stopped buying for her after year 1. And then a wire transfer. She had to read the amount 3 times. $250,000 to an account in Nadine Holt's name, dated 14 months ago. She stunned me very still. She picked up her phone. She photographed every screen, methodically, thoroughly. The way a woman photographs something she knows she will need later, in a room that is very quiet, with no one watching. He did not have an affair, she said to the empty room. Her voice was flat and certain. He had a second life, and I was living in the background of it, thinking I was the main character. She called Evan Mercer's office herself this time, not his receptionist, his direct line, which was listed on the firm's website. He answered on the second ring. "Mr. Mercer," she said. "My name is Claire Whitmore. My husband is Garrett Whitmore. I have documentation. I need to understand what my options are." A brief pause, then, "Mrs. Whitmore, I have been following the news this morning. Can you come in today?" She looked down at her stomach. I am 8 months pregnant. I have a ground floor office and a very comfortable chair, he said. 2 o'clock. She said yes. She hung up. She went to the closet. His closet. The walk-in he had taken over entirely, whose organization she had rearranged twice at his request, whose temperature she had lowered because he ran warm, whose 3 remaining inches of her own clothing were pressed into the far left corner like an afterthought. She took his watch tray, the one she had purchased for his birthday, the one she had chosen carefully, the one with the navy velvet interior that matched nothing in the room but that she had liked, and she moved it from his dresser to the hallway outside the bedroom door. It was a small act, almost nothing, a few inches of distance, but it was the first inch of ground she had taken back in 3 years, and her hands were steady when she did it. She moved her clothes back to the center of the closet. She rehung them the way she liked them, grouped by color, cool tones on the left, warm tones on the right, the way she had organized her closet in her apartment before she moved in here and slowly rearranged everything to suit someone else. It took 11 minutes. They were the most purposeful 11 minutes she had spent in 2 years. Her phone buzzed. Garrett. She looked at it. She turned it face down. She sat on the edge of the bed and she called Patrice. Her mother picked up on the first ring. She always picked up on the first ring, as if she spent her life adjacent to the phone, waiting, as if she always knew. "Mom," Claire said. Her voice broke here, for the first time since the restaurant, not with grief, with something more complicated, the particular breaking that happens when you finally say a true thing aloud after holding it for too long. "I need to tell you something." She told her everything. When she finished, the silence on the line lasted 4 seconds. "Evan Mercer," her mother said. "Good. He handled your Aunt Helen's case 5 years ago. He is very good." A pause that had weight and meaning inside it. "I found his number 2 months ago, when you called me crying and told me it was just pregnancy hormones." Claire was silent. "I have been waiting," Patrice said quietly, "for you to be ready." Evan Mercer's office was on the 14th floor of a building downtown that smelled like old wood and careful money. His assistant, Pearl, white-haired 60-something, with the expression of a woman who had heard every secret in the city and had organized them all alphabetically, brought Claire water without being asked and a small footstool for her swollen ankles without being asked either. Evan himself was unremarkable at first glance. Medium height, dark-rimmed glasses, a slightly loosened tie that suggested precision beneath the appearance of informality. He looked like the kind of man who was consistently underestimated and who had built an entire career on that fact. He looked at the photographs on Claire's phone for 11 minutes. He did not speak. He did not react. He made notes in a yellow legal pad with a pen that made no sound. Then he looked up. "These are significant," he said. "I know. The wire transfer particularly, $250,000, if those funds came from marital accounts." "They did," Claire said. "I can show you the statements. I pulled them this morning." He looked at her over his glasses. "How long did it take you to gather all of this?" "About 45 minutes, she said. A small pause, something that might have been admiration in his eyes, carefully contained. "All right," he said. "Let me tell you what I think you are looking at." What she was looking at, Evan explained, in the careful, precise sentences of a man who chose every word the way a surgeon chooses instruments, was a husband who had spent between 18 and 22 months systematically restructuring his financial picture, moving funds from joint accounts to individual accounts, small amounts at regular intervals, the kind that do not trigger alerts. setting up secondary structures. The apartment, the wire transfer, that would be difficult to trace without exactly the kind of documentation she had just produced. He was preparing to file, Evans said. He wanted the financial picture to look different from what it had been when they married. Claire listened to this. The anger that had been building since the restaurant, since Garrett's eyes over the wine glass, since his voice saying, "You should have left," dropped in temperature. It went cold and solid and very, very useful. "What do you need from me in the next 72 hours?" she asked. Every joint account statement she could access, every investment document, every property filing with both names, any insurance policies, any documentation of business assets acquired during the marriage. "Can you do that?" "Yes," she said. "And Mrs. Whitmore?" He paused. "Are you safe at home?" She considered the question the way it deserved to be considered. "He has not been physically threatening," she said. "But after last night, his behavior at the restaurant, do you have somewhere else you can stay? Someone you trust completely?" "My mother." "I would suggest going there tonight, not dramatically, not as a statement, simply go." She thought about packing. What do you take when you are leaving a house that has never quite felt like home? She made a list in her mind without realizing she was doing it. Her grandmother's quilt, her prenatal vitamins, the yellow baby blanket her mother had crocheted, her laptop, her birth certificate, the hospital pre-registration paperwork with her name as the only listed contact. She had been preparing without knowing she was preparing. The knowledge had lived in her body, in her hands, in the list she was already making, long before her mind caught up with it. She drove home. Garrett's car was gone. She moved through the house methodically. She took what was hers. She did not take anything that was not hers. She did not leave a note. She was in the nursery, lifting the yellow crocheted blanket from the shelf, when her phone rang. "Unknown number," she answered. "Mrs. Whitmore?" A woman's voice, low, careful. "This is Nadine Holt." The silence lasted 3 full seconds. "I am not calling to apologize for last night," Nadine said. "I want to be clear about that. What I did was—" "I am not calling about that." A pause. "I am calling because Garrett told me this morning that what happened at the restaurant was your fault. That you provoked me. That he is going to tell everyone that version of events." Claire said nothing. "He used that exact phrase with me once," Nadine continued. "Something was my fault when it was not. And I believed him. I believed him for 18 months. Her voice was very controlled, but underneath the control was something cracked open and raw. "I am not your ally. I want to be absolutely clear about that. But I have things, texts, emails from him, about you, about what he planned to do after the baby was born. If you are speaking with an attorney, they should have them." Claire stood in the pale yellow nursery, holding the baby blanket her mother had made. She looked at the White Star Mobile, turning very slowly in the air from the heating vent. "Why would you do this?" she asked. "Because he played us both," Nadine said. "And only one of us is 8 months pregnant and standing in that house alone." A silence. "I will be at the coffee shop on Mercer Street tomorrow morning at 9, Nadine said. "I will be there for 30 minutes. Come or do not come." The line went dead. Claire stood in the nursery for a long time after that. She looked at the crib, the yellow walls, the mobile, all the careful, hopeful work she had done in this room, in this house, for this life that was supposed to be something good. Starting over feels impossible, she thought, but staying feels worse. She had felt that thought forming for months, shapeless and unavoidable. Now it had words. Now it was true and spoken and real. She finished packing. She put the yellow blanket on top of the bag. She carried it to her car. She drove to her mother's house. Patrice Dunmore lived in a small craftsman house 20 minutes from the city. She had hydrangeas on the porch, blue ones in a clay pot that had been there so long it had become part of the architecture. She had a welcome mat at the front door that was faded past the point of reading, and she had never once replaced it because, she said, everyone who needed to feel welcome already knew they were. She was standing on the front steps when Claire pulled up. She always did this, always appeared at the door at exactly the right moment, as if she had been listening for the sound of the specific car, the specific person, the specific need. She took the bag from Claire's hand without being asked. She opened the door without a word. She led her daughter to the back bedroom, Claire's room, always called Claire's room, even 20 years after Claire had left, where the same quilt from childhood was already on the bed, as if it had been waiting. She brought tea. The herbal blend she ordered online because Claire had mentioned once, 4 years ago, that she liked the way it smelled. She sat on the edge of the bed, and she said, "Tell me." Claire talked for a long time. Then she stopped talking and simply sat. Patrice did not fill the silence. This was the great, rare gift of her mother. She did not fill silence. She let it exist. She let it be what it needed to be. The room smelled like cedar and the faint ghost of the rose perfume Patrice had worn for 30 years. Outside, the neighbor's dog was barking at something in the dark. A car moved slowly down the street. Somewhere farther away, a child was laughing. A high, clear sound, entirely unaware of itself. The world was ordinary and going on without her permission. Claire put both hands on her stomach. The baby pushed back. A long, slow roll. Hello, hello. She knows you are here, Patrice said softly. It might be a boy, Claire said. It is a girl, Patrice said, with the absolute certainty of a woman who has been right about these things before. They sat like that for a while. No television, no phones, just the room and the cedar smell and the ordinary sounds of a neighborhood that did not know anything had happened tonight. Every woman who has ever sat in her mother's house in the middle of something terrible and felt for one single moment like a child being held by the world, this is that moment. Then Patrice said, "Now, practical things." She had a yellow legal pad. She had been writing on it. She turned it around and handed it across the bed to Claire. It was a list. Bank accounts to freeze, insurance policies to separate, hospital pre-registration to update. Claire's name only as primary contact. Every online password to change within the next 24 hours. A storage unit 2 miles away already rented in Patrice's name for documents and anything irreplaceable. The name and direct number of a financial advisor who specialized in sudden asset separation. "Mom," Claire said slowly, "how do you know to do all this?" Patrice picked up her tea. "Because I have been where you are," she said. "And because I have 7 friends who have been where you are. And because I have been quietly updating this list for 2 months." She looked at her daughter steadily. "I told you, I was waiting for you to be ready." Claire looked at the list for a long time. Garrett called at 5 in the afternoon, then at 6, then at 7, twice, then at 8, twice more. On the 7th call, she answered. "Where are you?" he demanded. "Somewhere safe." "Claire, this is not... You are being dramatic. We need to have an adult conversation about what happened today, and you running to your mother. I have been speaking with Evan Mercer," she said. "He will be in touch with your attorney." The pause that followed was the most informative pause of her marriage. She could hear him recalibrating. She could almost hear the specific moment when the conversation he had prepared for became a different conversation entirely. "You went to a lawyer," he said. His voice had changed. The reasonable, patient tone was still there, but something harder had surfaced underneath it. The way rock surfaces when floodwater recedes. "Claire, if you pursue this, it becomes adversarial. It becomes public. It becomes ugly. I do not want it to get ugly." "It got ugly last night," she said, "when your girlfriend put her hands on me and you told me I deserved it. It was already ugly. I am simply the last one to dress for it." She hung up. Her mother, from the doorway. "Good." At 9:45, Bryn called. Her voice had the specific texture of someone trying to sound calm about something that is not calm. "Claire, I need you to look at something. Do not panic. Just look." She sent a link. A gossip and entertainment website with a tip line that ran stories sourced from anonymous contacts. The headline was large and unambiguous. Claire Whitmore. Sources close to couple say billionaire who was a wife provoked restaurant incident. 3 anonymous quotes, all painting the same picture. Claire is volatile, so emotionally erratic, during pregnancy, prone to dramatic scenes in public. One quote described her as having screamed at Nadine in the restaurant parking lot in the hour before the incident. She had been inside the restaurant the entire evening. She had never been near the parking lot. "He did this," Bryn said. "I know. What do you want to do?" Claire looked at the yellow legal pad on the bed beside her. She thought about Nadine's phone call, the texts, the emails, about what he planned to do after the baby came. "I am meeting someone tomorrow morning," she said. "After that, I will know more." Nadine Holt was already there when Claire arrived at 9 the next morning. She was at a corner table, both hands around a coffee cup, wearing jeans and a gray sweater and nothing that announced her. Without the red dress and the restaurant performance, she looked different, younger, more tired, more like a woman who had also been through something and was still deciding what to do with what she knew. They looked at each other across the small table. "I have the same attorney," Nadine said, by way of greeting. "Evan Mercer. Apparently he is very busy this week." A startled, involuntary laugh escaped Claire before she could stop it. Nadine's mouth twitched slightly. They sat. "I did not know about you at first," Nadine said. "I need you to understand that. He told me you were separated, that it was a formality. Then you got pregnant, and he said it was an accident and he was managing it." She looked down at her coffee. "I know how that sounds." "How long did you believe him?" Claire asked. Nadine's jaw tightened. 7 months ago, I found out the full picture. I confronted him. He apologized. He promised to end it with you. I stayed." She looked up. "I know how that sounds as well." "It sounds like someone who was lied to," Claire said. And she meant it, not generously, not charitably, simply accurately. Something in Nadine's posture shifted. Just a fraction. She took out her phone. She slid it across the table. "Read from the top," she said. The emails had been sent from Garrett's personal account, forwarded to Nadine's account over the previous 6 months. Most were between Garrett and a contact identified only by initials, R.M., who Evan Mercer would later identify as a private consultant Garrett paid to manage legal strategy and reputation. Claire read them slowly. The plan was laid out across 14 separate emails, clinical and unhurried, the work of a man who had been thinking about this for a long time. Wait until the child was born. File for divorce within 60 days of birth, before Claire could establish a long-term lifestyle claim. Frame the marriage as troubled from the beginning. Reference Claire's 2 therapy sessions during year 1 of the marriage as evidence of emotional instability. Pursue primary custody on the grounds of her fragility. Use the child as the primary leverage point in the asset negotiation. She read it twice. Her hands were very steady. He was going to use the baby, she said aloud. Not to Nadine, to the window, to the ordinary street, to the woman with the stroller walking past outside. He was going to use my child against me. Yes, Nadine said quietly. Claire thought, I wore the navy dress. I fixed my hair. I thought maybe dinner would be nice. I sat there and smiled at his mother, and I genuinely, actually thought perhaps the evening would be all right. She could not believe, sitting in this coffee shop across from this woman, how much effort she had spent trying to make things nice, how much of her life she had organized around the project of not making things worse. She photographed every screen on Nadine's phone. She sent the images to Evan Mercer with a single line, escalation, call me. What will you do? Nadine asked. Fight, Claire said. She gathered her things. She stood. Thank you, she said to Nadine. I mean that sincerely. Nadine looked at her for a moment. Do not thank me, she said. Win. Evan called before Claire reached her car. His voice was different, sharper. The voice of a man who has just looked at something and immediately understood its value. The emails are solid, he said. Very solid. The documentation of a premeditated custody strategy, drafted before the child is born, will be viewed extremely unfavorably by any family court judge. It demonstrates bad faith. It potentially demonstrates malice. A pause. I need to ask you something. How do you feel about going public? She stopped walking. Not a campaign, he said quickly. A statement. Simple, factual, your words. You were physically attacked in a public restaurant while 8 months pregnant. Your husband defended the woman who attacked you. You are safe, the baby is well, and you are pursuing your legal options. Nothing else. 15 sentences. Your voice before his version becomes the only version. She thought about the gossip blog, the parking lot that never happened, the anonymous sources painting her as unstable and erratic and difficult. Yes, she said. Let's do it. She called Bryn. She was sitting in her car composing her thoughts when her phone rang again. A number she recognized but did not expect. Douglas Whitmore, Garrett's father, 78 years old, retired, a man who had always seemed to Claire like the version of the Whitmore family that had been left behind when the money arrived. Quietly decent in a family that had mistaken wealth for goodness. Claire, he said. His voice shook slightly. Age, she thought, not emotion. Then she heard his breathing and realized she was wrong. I was at the restaurant. I was seated 3 tables away. I saw what happened. She waited. I want you to know that what my son said to you last night and what he failed to do is unacceptable to me. There is no world in which any of that was acceptable. Not to me as his father. Not to me as that child's grandfather. She was so surprised she could not speak for a moment. I am not asking you to forgive him, Douglas said. I am asking you to allow me to be present for that baby when it comes. Regardless of whatever happens between you and Garrett, I would like to know my grandchild. She thought about it, about what it cost a man his age to call the woman his son had wronged and say these things. I appreciate that, Douglas, she said carefully. I do, but I need to ask you one thing. If you are asked to speak honestly about what happened that night by a lawyer or a judge or anyone else, will you tell the truth? The pause lasted 4 full seconds. Yes, he said. I will tell the truth. The statement went live at 3 o'clock on a Wednesday afternoon. Bryn managed the posting. She had spent 8 years in communications before she left to run her own small design firm, and she approached this the way she approached everything, with the precision of someone who understood exactly what she was doing and why. It went on Claire's personal page, which she had barely used in 2 years. Just her name at the top. No publicist, no lawyer's language, no strategic framing. Just this is what happened. This is who I am. I am well. 2 paragraphs, 15 sentences, written in the kind of plain, undecorated English that is more powerful than anything that has been polished. By 9 that night, it had 800,000 views. By the following morning, it had passed 3 million. The comments were, for once, in the specific and limited way that the internet sometimes manages, on the correct side of something. Garrett came to Patrice's house at 7 that evening. He did not call first. He knocked. Patrice opened the door. "I need to speak with my wife," he said. "Your wife is resting," Patrice said. Her voice was pleasant, entirely pleasant, the pleasantness of a woman who has made a decision and is not angry about it. Simply decided. "You are welcome to have your attorney speak with her attorney. Patrice," her mother said. "You have called me Patricia for 3 years. My name is Patrice." She closed the door. Claire was standing in the hallway. She had been listening. She did not move toward the door. She let her mother handle it and stood in the hallway and felt something she had not felt in a long time. Not power, something quieter than power. Relief. He called at 7:15. She answered. "The statement," he said. His voice was very controlled, the way very controlled things are when they are close to breaking. "You have made a private matter into a public. You told a gossip website that I provoked Nadine in the parking lot," she said. "I was never in the parking lot. If you want to have a conversation about public narratives, Claire," a warning underneath his name. She had spent 3 years learning the frequencies of his voice. She knew every one of them. Garrett. Just his name, just air, nothing underneath it at all. He pivoted. He apologized. It was a general, ambient apology, the kind designed to sound like remorse without creating any specific legal record of admission. She had heard this apology in different forms many times. She had accepted it every time. "I hear you," she said. "Have your attorney call Evan." She hung up. That night she baked. Her mother's cornbread recipe, the one written on a 3x5 index card in Patrice's handwriting, slanted, slightly smudged in one corner from some long-ago kitchen accident, that had been in the same kitchen drawer for 40 years. She stood at her mother's counter in the yellow light of the overhead lamp, enormous and uncomfortable, flower on her maternity shirt, the radio on low, playing something old and unhurried. She measured cornmeal. She measured buttermilk. She melted butter in the cast iron skillet on the stovetop, the way the card said, before pouring the batter in. The kitchen filled with the smell of butter and heat, the particular warm smell that is the smell of something being made from basic things, from scratch, from the beginning. She thought about nothing complicated. She thought about the recipe, about her mother's handwriting on the index card, about her grandmother, who had made this same bread at Christmas, in the same cast iron pan, and how the smell had filled the whole house for 2 days afterward. The baby moved, long and slow. "Hello? Hello. I am still here." She pulled the cornbread from the oven. She cut it too soon, while it was still too hot, and burned her fingers slightly, and did not care even slightly. She ate a piece, standing at the counter. "I am still here," she said to the kitchen, to the yellow light and the flour on her shirt and the baby moving under her hands. "After everything he tried to make me smaller with, I am still here, and I am making cornbread in my mother's kitchen, and I am fine." The specific darkness she had been carrying, the 3-year weight of loving someone who had been quietly deciding she was not enough, loosened its grip that night. Not all the way, but enough. She went to bed at 10. She slept deeply for the first time in months until 2 in the morning when she woke to something she could not quite name. It was not pain, not yet. Something that preceded pain, a pressure low in her back, and then a tightening, deep and slow, like a fist closing and releasing. She lay still for a moment, timing it, then another, then another. She counted for 40 minutes, watching the time on her phone in the dark room. She woke Patrice at 2:40. They drove to the hospital in Patrice's car, moving through streets that were nearly empty, the city asleep and quiet around them. Dr. Helena Voss was called at 3:15. She arrived in 12 minutes, already focused, already calm, the calm of a woman who had been called at 3 in the morning 1,000 times and had decided long ago not to waste energy on being annoyed by it. She examined Claire carefully, thoroughly, with the unhurried attention that had made Claire trust her from the first appointment 7 months ago. "You are not in active labor," she said, "but your blood pressure is elevated. I want to keep you here for monitoring. A few hours, let us see how things settle." They moved her to a room. Patrice stepped into the hallway to call Bryn. The door closed softly. The room was quiet. Just the steady beeping of the monitor, the gentle hiss of the ventilation system. And then Dr. Voss, on her way out, paused at the monitoring equipment and turned up the volume slightly on the speaker. The baby's heartbeat filled the room, steady, rapid, certain. A small, private gift. Claire lay in the hospital bed at 3 in the morning, in the specific loneliness of a crisis that belongs entirely to you, that no one else can enter. The ceiling was white and even. The monitor beeped its patient rhythm. She thought, he should be here. Then, without self-pity, simply as a fact, he should have been many things. She did not pick up her phone to check for messages from Garrett. Not at 3, not at 4, not when the sky outside the window began to change from black to dark blue. She did not check. The door that had locked in the restaurant parking lot was still locked. She was not rattling it. She would notice this absence later. The disappearance of a compulsion she had not even realized was a compulsion until it was gone. The 3 a.m. phone checking. The constant ambient hope that this time would be different. It was simply gone. Like setting down a bag she had been carrying for so long, she had stopped feeling its weight. Evan called at 8 in the morning. His voice was low and careful, the way it was when he had something significant to say and was deciding how to say it. Garrett's legal team filed a motion at 6:45 this morning, he said. A request for a temporary custody evaluation order. The argument is that your current living situation, combined with your hospital admission, indicates instability that warrants court-ordered evaluation before the child's birth. She looked at the white ceiling. He filed it 45 minutes after your admission was recorded in the shared insurance system. Evan continued. He has someone monitoring it. He saw the hospital admission in real time. The cold, the useful cold. "What do we have?" she said. "Douglas Whitmore has submitted a written statement to my office describing what he personally witnessed at the restaurant. Marcus Hale called yesterday. He has concerns about Garrett's business conduct, separate from the personal matters, and is willing to speak to character. Dr. Voss has offered a medical statement confirming that your admission is routine, precautionary, and reflects no instability of any kind." Evan paused. "And we have the emails." "He thought he was attacking," Claire said slowly. "But he used every card he had at once. He did not expect you to have the emails," Evan said. "He built a strategy against a woman who did not know what you know. That is no longer the situation." "He planned this against the woman he thought I was," she said, "not the one I am now. She was discharged the next morning, blood pressure normal, baby well positioned, everything as it should be. Dr. Voss walked her to the door herself, which she did not have to do, and shook her hand, which meant something. Outside, the air was cold and smelled like rain that had already happened. Patrice was pulling the car around. Bryn was texting from the waiting area, wanting to know if she needed anything. She stood on the sidewalk outside the hospital in the early morning light and took a full breath of cold air. The court date was in 11 days. The baby was coming in 4 weeks. She had documentation. She had allies she had not known she had. She had an attorney who believed her. She had nothing left to lose by telling the complete truth. She had not felt this unafraid in 3 years. The hearing was on a Tuesday. It was a preliminary motion hearing, custody evaluation order, asset freeze application, protective measures. Not a full trial. But it was on the public record, and Garrett had brought his full resources to bear. 3 attorneys at the defense table, a public relations consultant in the back row, Sandra Whitmore in a dove-gray suit, seated in the gallery with the expression of a woman attending a function she disapproves of. Garrett did not look at Claire when she entered. She sat at the plaintiff's table with Evan beside her. Patrice was in the first row of the gallery. Bryn was directly behind Patrice. And Douglas Whitmore, who had driven himself from his home on the other side of the city, who had called Claire the night before to confirm he was coming, who had said simply, "I will be there," was in the row behind Bryn. Claire did not look at Garrett. She looked at the bench and waited. The Honorable Margaret Crane was 62 years old and had the face of a woman who had spent 3 decades hearing every possible version of every possible story and had decided to be impressed by exactly none of them. She read through the submissions with the speed of a professional reader, which she was, moving through pages with the focused efficiency of someone who knew exactly what she was looking for. She put down the documents. She removed her reading glasses. "Counsel," she said to Garrett's lead attorney, "walk me through the factual basis for the claim of maternal instability." The attorney did. He was very good. He was precise, well-resourced, and persuasive. He had exhibits. He had a timeline. He had the therapy records from year 1 of the marriage. He had the hospital admission from 4 days ago. He had 3 anonymous character statements. When he finished, Judge Crane looked at him for a moment. "The evidence you have provided of instability," she said, "is a hospital admission resulting in a clean discharge report, a public statement corroborated by security footage and 47 named witnesses, and the fact that Mrs. Whitmore is currently residing with her mother while 8 months pregnant during a marital separation." She looked at him steadily. "Are any of those characterizations in dispute?" Silence from the defense table. "Motion denied," Judge Crane said. She went further. The email chain, she noted, contained explicit discussion of using an unborn child as a leverage instrument in asset negotiation, drafted before that child's birth, in deliberate coordination with a private consultant. This, she said, constituted documented evidence of bad faith in the anticipated custody proceedings. She issued a protective order, all discussions regarding the child's custody to be conducted through a court-appointed mediator, no direct communication between the parties on any matter related to the child outside of legal mediation. Effective immediately. Garrett's public relations consultant left the courtroom. Garrett, for the first time in this entire story, looked diminished, not destroyed, not humiliated in the way of public scenes, simply smaller, like a man who has been playing a game he was certain he controlled and has just realized the board is not the one he thought he was sitting at. In the marble hallway afterward, Marcus Hale was waiting. He looked uncomfortable in the specific way of a man who has been carrying something for a long time and is finally in the presence of the person he owes it to. "I want to apologize to you," he said. "I knew. Not the full picture, but more than I acted on, more than I should have stayed silent about." Claire looked at him. "What are you going to do with that?" she asked. He shifted. "I have spoken with the board about certain financial practices, not personal matters, business ones. There may be an audit." He met her eyes. "I thought you should hear it from me." She nodded. The business was not hers. It had never been hers. Whatever happened there would happen without her. "Thank you for telling me," she said, and walked past him to where her mother was waiting. Outside the courthouse, the morning was bright and cold, the particular brightness of a city that does not know it has just witnessed something important. She stood on the wide stone steps and breathed. Evan came to stand beside her. "He will settle," he said quietly. "I believe that. He does not want to return to that courtroom, not with what we have." "What does settle look like?" she asked. "Equitable distribution of marital assets across the full term of the marriage. The wire transfer to Nadine Holt will likely be designated as dissipation of marital assets. It comes back into the pool. Primary residential custody for you, with standard visitation rights for him, subject to the mediator's oversight and the court's review. Child support structured on his actual documented income." He paused. "Which, as you know, is considerable." She nodded. The baby moved. A long, slow roll, the same rolling hello she had been feeling for months. "I am not doing this for the money," she said. She was not speaking to Evan. She was speaking to the steps and the city and the cold, bright air. "I am doing it so my daughter grows up knowing that what happened at that dinner table was not acceptable, that none of it was her mother's fault, that the woman sitting in that restaurant with her hands on her stomach was worth protecting, even when the person who should have protected her chose not to." Evan was quiet for a moment. "That," he said, "is exactly why you will win." Her name was Rosalind Claire Whitmore, born at 7:14 on a Thursday morning in April, when the light through the hospital window was the specific gold of early spring. Not harsh, not pale, but the particular gold of a thing that is genuinely new. Claire named her Rosalind for her grandmother, her mother's mother, a woman who had outlived 2 husbands and raised 4 children and made cornbread in a cast-iron skillet every Christmas, and had told Claire once, the summer she was 12, that a woman who knows her own mind is the most powerful thing on earth. She had not fully understood that at 12. She was beginning to understand it now. She called her Rosie from the first moment. Before she was fully cleaned and wrapped and placed in Claire's arms, before the official weight and length were recorded, before the birth certificate was filled in with the name she had been carrying in her mind for 4 months, she was already Rosie, already fully herself, already certain. Patrice was there. Bryn was there, having driven so fast from her apartment that she arrived 20 minutes before she should have been able to. Dr. Voss delivered Rosalind with the same focused warmth she had brought to every appointment for 7 months. The baby cried. Claire laughed, not from joy exactly, though there was that too, from something more immediate, the shock of a sound she had been waiting for longer than 9 months, the shock of, "There you are, there you finally are." Garrett was not there. His attorney had been notified when labor began, as per the mediator's agreed protocol. He was 40 minutes away. He had been informed at 5 in the morning when Claire's contractions became regular, and again at 6:15, and again at 7. He chose not to come. This was the most clarifying thing he had ever done for her. She would think about it many times in the years that followed, not with grief, not with the ache of what could have been, with gratitude. It was the most honest thing he had ever given her. He had spent 3 years performing a version of himself that was not real. And in the most important moment of his daughter's life, he had finally, accidentally, been completely truthful. He had shown her exactly who he was. She was glad she saw it clearly. She was glad she had already chosen accordingly. The nurse asked if she wanted the baby placed on her chest. She said yes. Rosie was warm and impossibly small, and she made a sound against Claire's collarbone. A complaint, a declaration, an announcement of presence, and turned her face in and was quiet. Every woman who has held a newborn and felt the particular weight of something she was afraid she might lose and did not lose. Every woman who has arrived somewhere after a very long road and looked around and thought, oh, so this is where I was going. This is what it was for. They know this moment. 6 weeks later, the apartment was small. Smaller than the house, much smaller than the house. She had chosen it specifically and deliberately for its smallness, for the fact that it was only as large as she needed it to be, that every room had a purpose and nothing about it was for show. She had found it on a Sunday afternoon with Rosie in a carrier on her chest, walking through rooms and deciding room by room what fit and what did not, what was hers and what was not, what she wanted to carry forward and what she was content to leave behind. The nursery was pale yellow again. She had painted it the first weekend after she moved in, Rosie napping in the bouncy seat on the drop cloth, while Claire rolled the same color, the exact same shade she had kept the paint chip from the original nursery, onto the new walls. The crib was reassembled in the corner, the mobile of white stars turning above it. Everything else in the apartment was different. Everything else was chosen by her, for reasons that were entirely her own. The kitchen table had been purchased at a Saturday market 2 weeks after she moved in, Bryn beside her, Rosie in the stroller. It had cost $40 and needed refinishing. She had refinished it on a Tuesday afternoon with Rosie in the carrier on her chest, sanding and staining while the baby slept against her heartbeat. It was the most satisfying Tuesday she had spent in years. The settlement had been finalized the week before. It was what Evan had predicted. Equitable distribution. The wire transfer returned to the marital pool. Primary residential custody for Claire, with Garrett permitted visitation through the mediator's schedule, which he had so far used twice. Child support structured on documented income, which was very substantial, and which meant that Claire did not have to return to work immediately. Though she was already researching, quietly, the licensing requirements to open a small physical therapy practice. Something small, something entirely hers. She had been sleeping through the night when Rosie allowed it. The particular sleep of someone who is no longer listening for footsteps, no longer braced in the dark for the specific silence of a marriage gone wrong. She woke in the morning in her own bed in her own apartment, and she was aware of herself in a way she had not been for 3 years. Simply, plainly, quietly aware of existing, of taking up space, of deserving to take up space. Douglas Whitmore called on Thursdays, regular as weather, to ask about Rosie. He had met her twice, once at the hospital with careful, grateful hands, and once at Patrice's house for Easter Sunday, where he had held her through an entire meal and not put her down until she fell asleep. He and Patrice had been civil in the way of two people who respect each other without particularly needing to explain why. Bryn came over on Wednesdays with takeout and stayed until 9, and they talked about everything and nothing, and it was ordinary and sustaining and enough. Nadine Holt, Claire had heard through Evan, had moved to another city. She had sold her car, sublet her apartment, and left. She had sent a gift when Rosie was born, a small silver rattle in a white box, no card. Claire had opened it in the kitchen of this apartment, turned it over in her palm, set it on the shelf in the nursery between a stuffed rabbit from Patrice and a small, framed print that said simply, "You are enough." She had kept it because it felt true to the actual story of how she got here. The story that did not have simple villains. The story that was more complicated and more human than that. On a Saturday afternoon in May, Rosie asleep in the nursery and the apartment full of afternoon light, Claire sat at the refinished kitchen table and wrote. Not the legal documents. Those were done, filed, complete. Not the journal she had started at Patrice's house in those first raw weeks. Something new, something she had been composing in her mind since the morning she stood outside the courthouse in the cold, bright air. A letter for Rosalind, for when she was old enough. She wrote, "There was a dinner once that I believed was the worst night of my life. I was wrong. It was the night everything that needed to break finally broke. And on the other side of the breaking was you. And this kitchen, and this light coming through these windows, and my whole life, which turned out to be much larger than I had allowed it to be." She paused. She listened to the monitor, the small sounds of Rosie sleeping, the particular breathing of a person who has never had a reason to be afraid. She thought about everything that had happened between that restaurant table and this kitchen table. The shattered glass and the hands on her shoulders and her husband's voice telling her she deserved it. The email thread in the shared account she had never thought to check. The yellow legal pad in her mother's hand. Evan's 11 minutes of silence over her photographs. Nadine's voice on this phone, cracked open and offering the one thing that could help. The cornbread, the filing, the courtroom, the door to Patrice's house closing in Garrett's face. The morning her blood pressure dropped and Dr. Voss turned up the volume on the monitor and the room filled with the sound of a heartbeat that was not hers, steady and rapid and absolutely certain of itself. The morning she stood outside the hospital in the cold air and was not afraid. She wrote, "I want you to know that your worth is not what someone else assigns to it. Not a husband, not a courtroom, not a gossip website, not the silence of people who should have spoken sooner and did not. You are not the sum of the worst things that were done to you. You are not the story someone else tells about you. You decide what you are worth, and then you hold that number. And you do not negotiate it down, not for anyone, not for any reason. I know this now. I did not always know it. I knew it theoretically, the way you know things you have read, but not yet lived. I know it now the way you know a room after you have lived in it for years, from the inside, in every light, at every hour." She set the pen down. She looked at the kitchen, at the table she had refinished herself, at the window where the afternoon light came through and lay across the floor in long, warm panels, at the shelf by the door where she kept her keys and Rosie's hat and the small silver rattle in the same breath as the frame print that said, "You are enough." The world was ordinary. It was ordinary the way things are ordinary after they have been fought for, the way quiet is quiet after a long time of noise, not empty, full of something that required difficulty to arrive at. She was 32 years old. She had a daughter who smelled like warmth and milk and something new. She had a mother who made lists and waited patiently for her children to be ready. She had a best friend who arrived uninvited with groceries at the right moment. She had an attorney who had believed her from the first phone call. She had a table she had made useful again with her own hands. She had herself, fully, finally, without apology. She finished the letter. She folded it. She put it in the back of the journal, between 2 pages, for later, for when Rosie was old enough to need it, and she would know when that was. She stood up. She went to the nursery door and looked in at her daughter, sleeping in the pale yellow room. under the White Star Mobile, turning slowly in the still air. Rosie's face in sleep had the complete, uncomplicated peace of someone who did not yet know that the world would ask things of her, and who would, when the time came, have a mother who had already learned to ask them right back. Somewhere, there was a restaurant, crystal and candlelight, 47 tables, a piano playing something indistinct near the bar, the muted laughter of people who had never had to worry about anything. Claire Whitmore was not there. She was here in this kitchen, with this light, with this child, with this life that had broken open at its worst seam to reveal what had always been waiting inside it. Her. Just her. And it was enough. It was more than enough. It was everything. Editorial disclaimer. Closing statement. The content you just experienced, every scene, every character, every carefully chosen word, was researched, constructed, and manually edited by our team with a single purpose: to bring you stories that carry real meaning. We do not generate and publish. We think and we build and we revise and we ask, does this story tell the truth about something that matters? Does it treat the audience with the respect they deserve? If the answer is yes, then we share it with you. Thank you for being the kind of audience worth making something for. Until next time, take care of yourself. You are worth that.